What's going on, Guardian? Sly here, and welcome back to another Rise of Iron weapon review. This time around, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at one of the Wrath of the Machine raid weapons called the Genesis Chain. Primaries only drop from the last phase of the boss axis, and just like the chest after the Siege Machine, you have a chance to receive 2 loot drops by using a cache key, and the helmet is also a possibility. So with our fellow Guardians figuring out, sticking it out, and ultimately putting the boot to axis for good, raid primaries will start to become a common sight here very soon. Hopefully this guide will give you all a little insight on the weapon, and when you finally get it, you'll know everything about it. Alright, so let's get to it, guys. So today we're going to take a look at the weapon that most of us have seen before. The Genesis Chain is the raid's primary auto rifle. The reason why it looks familiar is because we've all tested similar versions to it with the gunsmith or received it from him at some point in time. What we have here is a beastly Sivified version of the Suros ARI-45. Now this is strange because if you read the caption under the weapon's title, it clearly says Suros ARI-41, insert Siva in this current projectile. Furthermore, if you look at the stats of the ARI-45, you'll see that they match up to the Genesis Chain very closely, while the 41 is a completely different archetype. Once again, not a big deal. They could just easily say this is starting Siva, changed it, boom, problem solved. I thought that was kind of different, just wanted to point it out to you. Now since we've seen just some of those stats, let's go back and check them out. The Genesis Chain is a slower firing, higher impact auto rifle. It's in the same archetype as the exotic Suros regime, answering core, deal breaker, and for the year 1 fans, same thing as the Summoner, Vanquisher, and Shadow Price. As far as stats, we have rate of fire 77, impact 28. These are all pre-upgrade stats. Amazing range for an auto rifle at 40, most in this archetype hover around 28 or a little bit lower. It also has hammer forged and high caliber rounds, both which boost range. But in my opinion, hammer forge is hard to beat as an added perk when stability isn't an issue. Speaking of stability, we have a very respectable stability starting at 44 and reload sitting at 73. As for secondary stats, we have aim assist at 55, which is also great for an auto rifle, well, unless you're the Doctrine of Passing, of course, but compared to the others, it stacks up pretty well. Equip speed 45, recoil direction 75, and 15 zoom, that's always typical. As for perks, they seem to be all set. First, we have the intrinsic perk present in all Wrath of the Machine raids, Whirlwind's Curse. This weapon does bonus damage against Fallen, bonus agility while this weapon is equipped. As for barrel upgrades, we have Linear Compensator, Accurized Ballistics, and then Field Choke. Secondary perk is Focused Fire. When zoomed, this weapon fires slower but causes additional damage. I'm still not sure how I feel about this one. Anyways, as far as stat boosts in the middle, we have Speed Reload, High Caliber Rounds, and then Hammer Forged. Finally, its last perk is something new to Wrath of the Machine, and it's called Focused Firefly. While Focused Fire is active, precision kills cause the target to explode. A couple of quick things about that. Now to me, a perk like that just screams to be an option. It's even worded as while Focused Fire is active. Makes it seem like this was supposed to be an option rather than a set-in-stone perk. So maybe hard raid weapons will have some kind of, Sivified version with extra options, or I guess even more Sivified. Maybe it's just wishful thinking on my end, but to me, it just seems like it would be unnecessary to word it as while Focus Fire is active. Why not just give it plain old Firefly? I mean, you have no other choice, so Firefly would have worked just as well. It's not like you can upgrade around it, so regardless if you have Firefly or Focused Firefly, it's going to be the same thing. Just something I noticed, let's see if it pans out. Now before we get into performance, I had an issue with the way the raid weapons were just reskinned gunsmith weapons. While it may fit into the lore a little bit, everything Siva touches is drastically altered or repurposed, and I don't see that going on here very much. A black coat of paint, a few new perks like Focused Firefly, and boom, brand new raid weapon? Come on. I have issues with that myself, but moving past that, what they did do was pretty cool. An unupgraded raid weapon has holes all through it and it looks pretty rough. But as you can see here, once you fully upgrade the weapon itself, Siva starts to grow onto the weapon as you upgrade it. Once you fill in the final node, these holes in the weapon start to fill in with fragments wire connected to, and after you shoot them, they start to glow. The last few shots, shine out a pretty noticeable glow. All raid weapons do this to some degree. So far, the auto rifle and the rocket launcher seem to be the most affected. I will admit that is a cool little touch. So let's bring this weapon out into the world. In PvP, we know how focused fire really isn't the best option for a PvP weapon, and this weapon reminds you that as soon as you take it into the Crucible. While it does have some bite to it, especially with consistent headshots, the lack of any stability upgrades makes this gun a real hindrance when trying to land consistent headshots. Now you can use the weapon from the hip and skip focused fire, but again, accuracy and bullet grouping become an issue at any real length, and after the 15th slide shotgun in a row, the gun pulls you to the sidelines and politely asks you, what the hell are you doing with me in here? If you really want to use focus fire in the Crucible, which admittedly can work great, Suros Regime is going to be the way to go. This weapon, let it do what it was born to do, and that's to kill Fallen. Outside of Shax's Bloodbath, this weapon is pretty awesome, I'll have to admit. Those annoying shanks at the end of the raid, not a problem. Splicers, Fallen, Hive, even Ascendant Witches aren't a problem for this weapon, and here is where this weapon really shines. Now, it's definitely not as hard as hitting as some of the other raid weapons out there, and I don't know if I'd rank this above the insanely stable and powerful Raid Scout, but it definitely has a place in my inventory. In PvE, hitboxes are so much larger, and this time we don't have Hive traveling at light speed all over the place, so headshots are easy to come by and very fun to pull off. It's still odd seeing an auto rifle proc Firefly, but getting used to it isn't a problem for me. The range is pretty good, focused fire gives that extra little damage boost, and even when you're shooting at enemies at the upper limit of its intended range, it's still hitting with a hard enough punch to get the job done, which is great for those spawning shanks at the far end of the map during the last phase of Axis. Now, there aren't a ton of options to set this weapon up with, but to me, best choices are going to be Linear Compensator or Accurized Ballistics. I roll with Linear Compensator. It's supposed to help keep the predictable recoil in line and a tiny less sliver impact than Accurized Ballistics would have. In damage terms, no real difference. As for the stat boosts in the middle, this thing doesn't need help with reload. It's already pretty good. Find yourself some AR gauntlets and you're G to G. High caliber rounds are always a good option, but a harder handling weapon is something you should avoid unless it's a tremendous difference. Like how the Monte Carlo almost gets double impact at the cost of half of its stability for the same rate of fire, or how the Last Word used to get a nice impact boost the same way. If it's something that noticeable, then absolutely go for it. But for this one, the clear winner is Hammer Forged. Awesome range increase, and one thing a lot of people take for granted, the added accuracy. Anytime you can improve on a weapon's accuracy, which in the end translates into better bullet grouping, you should absolutely do it. That, plus an extra boost to range, with Hammer Forged, that is obviously the clear victor. If I had to sum it up into a too long didn't watch version, stick with the Suros Regime if you want focused fire in PvP, and let this weapon do what it was meant to do, and that is kill Fallen. It's far from the next Mythic class, but if you're below the recommended light level for the raid, the intrinsic perk goes a very long way, and from what I've seen, will outdo just about all the other non-raid weapons. Once everyone catches up into the 380 light or higher, other weapons will more than likely take back over. But for right now, it's exactly what we need at just the right time. Alright Guardians, that's it. My first weapon review for Planet Destiny, and I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you want to get in touch or see more of my channel, feel free to check me out at Sly Nation on YouTube or Twitter. If you want to stay ahead of the game, Planet Destiny is the best source for all your Rise of Iron and Wrath of the Machine needs. Keep checking back and we'll definitely have what you need. That's it, ladies and gents. I'm out of here. As always, a total pleasure. Until next time, Guardians, this is your boy Sly. Later.